In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved, and were loved. Now, we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with those who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
You know, it's sort of extraordinary that here in Kansas City is the nation's National World War I Museum and Memorial. And I think that's what's particularly extraordinary is that all this happened in the weeks after the armistice in 1918, that a group of community leaders came together to ask this question: how do we honor the war dead of the region? How is it that we can create a tribute for peace? And then the story really begins then.
When you come in through the bronze doors, across that glass bridge that spans 9,000 poppy blooms, representing over 9 million combatants who died in the war, you walk into this story from 1914 through 1919. It begins with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and Sophie Chotek in Sarajevo on June 28th of 1914. What many believe to become a regional conflict actually spills outside of the borders of Eastern Europe and ultimately involves all inhabited continents of the world over the course of 4 years, where 9 million combatants die and more than 30 million lose their lives because of this war. But in April of 1917, the United States declares war against Germany to make the world safe for democracy. We went from a standing army of 120,000 in 1914 to over 4 million who serve across our armed forces, and women served in each of the existing armed forces of the time.
Missouri has a lot of connections to World War I. Over 156,000 Missourians served overseas in the American Expeditionary Forces. In addition to not just manpower, a number of animals served from Missouri as well. About 300,000 mules came from the United States to serve in the Allied forces, and about 170,000 of those came from the state of Missouri itself, in addition to about 150,000 horses. And of course, the most famous soldier, or one of the most famous soldiers of the war, was General John Pershing.
A Missourian is the most influential individual. General John J. Pershing, a 5-star general who leads the American Expeditionary Forces, absolutely shapes the start of the U.S. military as we know it in the 20th century, and he helps turn the tide and win the World War for the Allies. And the World War shapes Missourians who become tremendous leaders within the world scene, like then Captain Harry S. Truman, who later becomes President of the United States. It was his experiences in the World War that helped inform his decisions to desegregate the United States military when he was president.
In the latter part of 1919, 83,000 households in the community of about 280,000 people here in the city of Kansas City made gifts totaling $2.5 million, the equivalent today of about $45 million. Then in 1921, the 5 Allied commanders from Belgium, Italy, France, the United Kingdom, and from the United States gathered here for the dedication of the site. The first time that they'd ever been together, and we know of no other time that those 5 were together again. And then the structure was built and then opened in the presence of President Coolidge, who had been here in 21 came in 26, 150,000 people celebrating the opening of this monumental memorial.
Well, we cover the entire history of World War I in an encyclopedic nature. We don't just tell of the American experience, but the experience of all the belligerent sides. So you learn everything from, the history of the war itself, the preconditions that caused the war, of course, the battles and the soldiers who served. But you can also learn about the people back home, whether they were Americans, French, Germans, British, worldwide, and how they experienced the war. Women, their involvement in the war, communities of color, how they were involved in the war as well.
You continue through the galleries, you get the opportunity to engage with new interactives that explain who these different 8 empires were at the start of 1914. And as you conclude your visit in the main gallery, you can see these rise and shifts, not only of power, but of individual stories, because we let the words of those who lived and in some instances died because of the war, we let their words be the story.
So I'm sitting in the middle of our open storage center that was opened in 2023. It's 4,000 square feet of over 1,500 objects that are on display for people to see and learn about how we store the objects in our collection. We have over 350,000 objects in our collection in total, so we can only display a small fraction of those at any one time. This open storage area lets people get an idea of how we store objects behind closed doors. It really gives an understanding too of the breadth of our objects, not just weapons and uniforms from World War I, but children's toys and games, and women's clothing and musical instruments that tell a more expansive story about how people experienced the war. The tower itself is 217 feet tall, and you can take an elevator to the top, and you have to walk the last 45 feet. And it gives you one of the best views of the skyline of Kansas City that you can get. Its architecture is inspired by Egyptian and Assyrian architecture. It's flanked by 2 sphinxes, and there's a grand frieze on the front of the memorial as well that talks about the role of soldiers coming from the civilian world, being called up to service, and then their involvement in the war, and then coming back home, back to their families.
Part of our work is to tell the story, help people learn from World War I, but also understand the enduring impact of decisions made long ago and how the world continues to be shaped by that. And so people are looking to learn from those experiences to help inform them about how we might shape the future. I feel very confident that this museum will contribute to that discussion, and that what is one of the world's great museums will continue to play a role in as people think about the peaceful future that we all yearn for, that we might take lessons from that. It's said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
Wherever you are from, this is a war that helps set the stage of what you know today. And so we deeply believe you should come to your National World War I Museum and Memorial to learn that full story about it, where we tell about all sides of the conflict. We have a collection that is the most global collection in the world, and we delight in sharing this history that is both hard but incredibly interesting and full of hope and stories of service, sacrifice, courage, and patriotism.